Hello and welcome to Hear These Words, a podcast and video series from Good Shepherd Episcopal Church. I'm Sanford Groff.
And I'm Jim Cook.
And every week on the podcast, we take a look at the readings assigned for the upcoming Sunday by the Revised Common Lectionary. And this week is Proper 9, Year A. It's also July 4th weekend, and the words we hear are Matthew 11, 16 through 19, and 25 through 30. Multiple verses in Genesis chapter 24, Psalm 45, 11 through 18, and Romans 7, 15 through 25a. Father Cook, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome back to
Thank
you and the youth group.
Yes,
It was a really good week, productive, and
we were in Costa Rica for the week last week, and had a great time with, actually our friends over at St. Mark's. They combined the youth groups and they did work around VBS kind of with neighborhood kids. They did a vacation Bible school, and then they painted and sanded a concrete wall that will be the future perimeter of the mission that we stayed at. So the expansion.
Yeah.
I did not know that you could sand concrete.
No, it sounded
with
kind of weird when I
paper.
told the congregation. I was like, I guess they sanded concrete. It sounded more like
we did sand concrete.
Discipline action or something.
And you don't you just, it's like sandpaper. You don't even use like a special machine. You just.
And the kids love doing that, I bet.
I don't think they loved that part, but I thought it was good. It was a good thing for them to.
Good spiritual discipline.
Yeah, it's a little, for me too. A little physical labor just to not take.
The weather was okay down there. Did it rain a lot? Or?
We thought it was going to rain constantly, and it only rained at the very, very end when we were at the volcano. So the rest of the days were beautiful, temperate, really even sunny at some points. So it was,
good.
Yeah, the weather cooperated.
Well,
and the flights and all that, the train.
All worked.
Everything worked.
Great.
The buses.
Good for you. Excellent. Well, thank you for doing that.
Thanks for holding down the fort here. Everything was good?
Everything was great.
Great.
Yeah. Everyone behaved. Thank you for
behaved.
that. Yeah,
Keep
absolutely.
behaving. All right, Matthew 11. This is, it's a famous. There's a famous part in this, but Jesus says, "To what should I compare this generation?" He kind of goes on and on about John the Baptist, and we'll have to give you a little context for that in a second. And then the famous part, "Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light."
Yeah. One of the most famous passages in all of the Gospels.
Pretty famous, yeah.
Yeah.
This comes in the midst, we are omitting, the lectionary writers have omitted some verses. And before this little part with Jesus, John the Baptist is in prison, and he is asking whether or not Jesus is the actual Messiah who was promised, right? So John is having his own kind of doubts because Jesus is not acting the way that maybe John had hoped he should be as the Messiah. And so word comes to Jesus about this from John, and kind of Jesus responds, and then this comes right after that. So for John came neither eating nor drinking, and yet they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds.
So Jesus is ticked.
Yes.
Right now.
Right.
And he's upset, I think, by the way people are responding to both John and to him, what they were saying. And he compares them, he compares that generation, in some way us, to like children who play these games.
Right.
And one group of kids, is playing this game where somebody's getting married and there's a flute and everyone's happy and we're all celebrating. And then this other group of kids is kind of pretending they're at a funeral.
Right.
And he's mad that the two of them can't play together. In essence, is what he's kind of saying there. There are these games that you used to play, and he's accusing. He's articulating what we're like, that we're like little children who are all in our own corners, and we're playing our game, and we're putting onto Jesus or onto John what we think they should be. like and teaching, and they don't like, the crowds really don't like what both Jesus and John say.
Right.
I think is what's kind of going on. And he's mad.
Yeah.
And John's doing a little bit of that too with Jesus in a
Right.
way. Like, you're not really
Right.
doing what I want you to do, you know? So I laugh at passages like this because, again, for me, they're so contemporary in how we all want what we want in our way from Jesus. And if it doesn't support what I've already determined God to be like, then I don't like it. I don't like you. I'm not the one that needs to change. You need to change. Jesus.
Right.
Or John.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah. And that kind of leads up to Jesus saying, you know, I thank you, Father, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent and have revealed them to infants. All things have been handed over to me by the Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and the Son and not the Father except the Son. And anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. So there is this question here in this passage about, you know, what is known and what is unknown, and how do you kind of deal with that, especially given the missed expectations that John the Baptist and the rest of the crowd has on Jesus. You know, I think we oftentimes read the famous part out of context. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens. We think, oh, I'm stressed out about my fill in the blank, you know, whatever that happens to be that we're stressed out about. And I'm not saying Jesus doesn't give you rest and give you, you know, hope in the midst of that. I certainly think he does. But this is kind of coming, this is kind of coming after this, you know, chapter, almost full chapter of people having missed expectations, and Jesus saying basically, no, part of this life that you're following me into is to be yoked. You know, you're being connected to me in a particular way that is going to not be a cakewalk. It's not going to be the easiest thing that you've ever done. But I'm telling you, when you do it with me, you know, it's going to be the absolute best, even though it might be somewhat difficult.
Yeah. I think that's right, and I think it's always interesting. Go back, all of you who are listening, go back and look at the passages the lectionary skips. Sometimes those are the most interesting passages. Like, why did they skip those? And all it really is Jesus kind of comparing, again, this generation to previous generations. And he condemns these cities that were both pagan and also Jewish cities, and says you're just like them. It's kind of a little bit like using those children as an example. You know, some of you are doing this and some are doing that, and you're all fighting with each other, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Gentile community or you're a Jewish community, you're still resisting like the truth that we bring, that John and I bring, and yet you're not happy, right? You condemn me because I'm with outsiders. You condemn John because he is ascetic. You think he's a demon. I mean, it's all this and it's frustrating, and yet it also comes this come upon me, you are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and we're yoked. It also comes following his previous teachings, where he set, you know, son against father. I mean, kind of what the readings were on Father's Day. You chose really good weekends to be gone, by the way. Just so you know that. For those who have,
Between that
who have
and
to preach the
binding of
lectionaries,
Isaac.
the binding of Isaac and the breaking up of families over Father's Day, it was riveting.
I have to go review the footage.
No wonder you decided to go on that mission trip with those kids over those 2 particular Sundays. Well done.
I wish I was that smart and intentional about when we schedule these things. Yeah.
But it's not easy, because this is also coming on the heels of where Jesus is kind of making people mad because of what he said it's going to cost you to follow me and to be my disciple, and then kind of says also, but hey, we're yoked. We're in this together. I'm going to carry that burden with you. You know, so trust me.
Right.
But again, we can't do that. We've got to find a God made in our image. And it's, to me, nothing has changed. And communities of followers are still doing the exact same thing. We're still trying to make Jesus appealing enough to come to my church, but not too demanding, because you might get mad at us. Because we're kind of the translators of that.
Sure.
So don't make it too hard for me.
Right. Right.
And, so it's so much easier to walk out and blame the preacher, blame the congregation. I'll just go down to the street until I find the place that's going to make me feel the best. And I think that's a problem for all of us, because then we're tempted to sort of water down the gospel, or to make it appealing, or we're tempted to think it's all on us to make it palatable.
But I think that's that's exactly the balance Jesus is trying to strike here.
Yeah.
He's saying, first of all, you will find rest for your souls.
Right.
So there's that concept. And then my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He doesn't say, I'm removing the yoke from you. And he's also not saying you have zero burden. He's saying there's something in here that is going to be your responsibility that you have to carry. And yet in carrying it, it actually will rejuvenate your soul.
Yes.
That there's this connection, a deep spiritual connection with kind of what we are called to do, and the spiritual results of that. Now, be careful, because you can get into prosperity gospel that we've talked about in previous weeks and say, oh, well, that'll have some sort of material gain, but that's not actually what he's saying here. And he's saying the mechanism by which this happens is gentleness and humility. So it's, I think it's
and trusting that, kind of going with me, take the walk with me, and you'll see that you're going to find your real freedom.
Right.
But you have to be willing to trust me.
Right.
So, and John is sitting in prison, kind of with the same questions we have. Even though it's John, he's so tough and self-assured and clear about everything, but even he has a doubt. Right. So
because he expects something of Jesus that Jesus is not delivering.
Right. And so there's grace mixed in all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty brilliant.
Yeah. Let's turn to Genesis. If we're ready, are we ready?
Yeah.
This is first of all, this is going to be a long passage.
Yes. You can't.
It is going to be a long passage, and we'll see what we can kind of get out of this. But this is basically, it's basically trying to find Isaac's wife. Right, Rebecca. And so it's this story about, the servant saying to Laban, here's our family history, here's kind of what the family promise is that God has given, and it's happening at this well, right? And and not only that, but I think the story is told twice, is it not? No. It's just told in the third person there. So, they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" And she said, "I will." So they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse, along with Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "May you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring gain possession of the gates of their foes." And Rebekah and her maids rose up, mounted the camels, and followed the man. And then, with Isaac there, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. I don't really know what to do with it.
I don't either.
I mean, it's
probably what you'll end up choosing to preach on Sunday.
But
when you
after I
sit
do
down
some
and look at it,
heavy research about it,
I'm a little bit like, I don't know. I'm not really sure why. How's that paired with the gospel?
I don't know.
Aren't you glad you're listening? I hope you're either lamenting the quality of your clergy or you're laughing with us.
If we were really kind, we would do an edit and we would cut this whole part and then come to the conclusion that we finally land on, and save you the agony of walking with us through our own befuddlement of this passage. I guess it's recounting God's promises, but I don't really know where God shows up in this. I mean, it's kind of, who's Isaac going to marry? Let's go find someone Isaac's going to marry, and they find her, and she says yes.
And maybe it has something to do with Rebekah's consent,
right,
to marry Isaac,
based upon
that she's sitting with strangers, and she has to decide: do I trust the stranger or not? Mm-hmm. It's sort of that dilemma that we just talked about in the Gospels. Am I trusting what God is doing in my life, and who do I trust, and who is the one who's actually doing what is behind this? Is God.
Right.
And maybe Rebekah's faith and trust in that to do what she did and to say yes, I'll marry Isaac.
Right.
Was a form of that kind of trust.
Right. It's a foil of John the Baptist's doubt.
Yeah.
Right. It's the opposite of John the Baptist.
It's the opposite of John the Baptist.
Right. Maybe.
And Rebekah's an unknown figure who's a woman who comes in out of nowhere, unlike John, who's woven in and out of the Gospels from the beginning.
Right.
So maybe there's a link.
There you go.
I don't know.
We're going to pray on that one and see what comes on Sunday. It's only Wednesday. I've got time to.
It's 4th of July weekend. We're all like already sort of half off and half on.
Right.
Have mercy on us, Lord. Have mercy.
We're gonna read. We're gonna read Psalm 45 there during church, and then Romans 7, 15 through 25a. I actually do have something to say about this.
I'm sure you do.
I do. Paul, here, I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. And then Paul, in his Pauline way, kind of gets, pretty complicated in his syntax here. But, but in fact, it is no longer I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that nothing good dwells within me, that is, in my flesh. I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. Here's the thing to understand about Paul, especially in this part of Romans. Paul is not speaking about Jim Cook and Sanford Groff individually. He's talking about the powers and principalities of how major forces like sin and the law and grace operate on us as individuals and as groups of people. And so he's not in this, he's not saying, I think it would be a misread to say, oh, if only Paul had intended to do better in his life, he would do better. No, that's actually the opposite of what he's saying. I do not do what I want to do. I do the very thing I hate. Why? Well, because he's being kind of, I don't want to say controlled, but he's under the influence of sin. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inmost self, but I see in my members another law at war with the law of my mind. Right. So he's feeling torn by the way that he is both under kind of his flesh, he would say, is under sin, and yet his spirit or his mind, in this case, is under grace. And before you get too split in our philosophy about this, I don't think Paul thinks of himself in a way that is too a spirit and a mind as separated. I think he sees it together. But the way he's talking about it here, I think is best encapsulated, making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. So there's this piece in which he's trying to be free and live fully in accordance with the grace that's been given to him in Jesus Christ. And yet there's this kind of residual remnant, if you will, of how sin, he's lived under sin, he's kind of born into sin, so to speak, and that's not immediately dispensed with as a Christian.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Not really. Yeah.
Well, here, when you become a Christian, you don't immediately go from a sinful state to a sinless state.
You don't.
That's
It's
transformative.
It's an act of sanctification, right? It's that process of being made holy,
which we've talked about before,
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, in some ways, that's what he's saying,
right?
And I think when he talks about of the flesh,
yes,
it's not like saying that our bodies are bad,
correct?
Or what? I think it's more of the flesh is kind of way I'm sort of saying of the spirit or of the flesh, right? Of the flesh just being separate from God. I'm in that, and it doesn't mean that your flesh is bad,
right?
That our bodies are bad,
no.
or that it's a much deeper understanding of kind of like the work of the Spirit within you, and without. It's not a condemnation of the body. I do think the struggle. And whether he means it that way or not, but I do the very thing I don't want to do. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I can't, I don't, I do it almost instinctively, like impulsively, and then I look back and I go, why, I didn't do, that's not the right thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And yet by having that struggle, you're becoming sanctified.
Right.
Because you're now aware
right.
of a new being that's sort of being born within you. And so the wrong hurts in a way that didn't before because you're aware of it.
Right.
You think twice. Is that kind of, maybe he's not saying that, but I think that's kind of how the process of being made holy happens. So it's painful. Right. Because you become aware of your you become aware of where you are not at one with God.
Right.
Does that make
That's
sense?
the way I like to think of it, as alignment with God, right? Where we are aligned and where we are misaligned. I mean, that you can use sin and Paul here, again, the misreading would be to say, oh, my soul is pure, but my body is evil. That's actually heretical.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
That's outside the bounds of the church's teaching. That somehow we can divide. That's what I was trying to say earlier. That Paul is not here. It sounds like he's dividing the body and the soul, but he's not. No. He's not actually doing that. What he's saying is that he has been kind of liberated in Jesus Christ. He's been forgiven. He's under the law, or under grace, I should say. And yet there is this kind of residual misalignment.
Yes.
That is so part of being human.
Yeah.
That we end up being misaligned. We end up sinning, even when we don't want to.
Right.
But the difference now is that we actually are aware.
Yeah.
At some level, and the further we kind of progress in our discipleship and following of Jesus Christ, the more we become aware of those misalignments and those acts that we know, kind of, whether that's proactively or in hindsight, we know that, hey, that wasn't really the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But we still do them because we're a person in transformation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that the more we're aware of that, this misalignment, the deeper the relationship goes, and the more and more the grace of God is the only thing that can heal us
Right.
and align us. We
Right.
can't align us on our
ourselves,
own.
right, by ourselves, right.
Right. And so we become so aware of it. So it's like that kind of sense that the deeper you walk with Christ, the more aware you are that you're misaligned.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't necessarily feel good about yourself in that walk.
Right, right.
Right? Does that mean this is not about emotionally feeling like, oh great, I've defeated that, I'm better than somebody else.
No.
You become more and more connected to others because you're so aware
Right,
of how I am really not any better than that person next to me.
right, right,
Because I'm still misaligned from the grace of God
right.
that comes to us in Christ Jesus our Lord, right?
Yeah.
And so it always kind of gets to me a little bit when Christians act as though we're better than somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
when in essence we should be more humble
Right.
and we should identify
Yes.
with others
Yes.
rather
Right.
than feel superior to others.
Right. Right.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, I think the further we are in grace, right, the further we have, the longer and deeper that we've walked with Christ and in the life of God, I think the more sensitive we are
Absolutely.
to the
Absolutely.
misalignments and to the shortcomings of our own existence, to the distance that we have as humans with God. So in fact, even though empirically we would kind of look at it and go, well, before you were, on the Jesus train, you were actually quite distant from God, but you had no idea.
No.
Right? And now you're on the train, you're part of the body of Christ, the church, you're a faithful
Right.
Christian, and yet the actual gap the distance is much, much less, but it feels, you're more sensitive to it.
And so guilt
Right.
can become, well, maybe not for everybody, but it can become stronger
Right.
because you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you got to wrestle with that and work on how do I become more aligned? Because it's not that it's now I'm aware.
Right.
I'm starting to kind of see others in the world through the lens of Jesus.
Right. Right.
And I think that gets lost a little bit in our again in our marketing of Jesus.
Yes. And I would
Does
say,
that make
Paul,
sense?
yeah,
as
yes.
faith communities, which we're also a business, right? And so
Right.
you have to make this palatable for people.
Right.
When it's
Right.
actually like, you know what? It's kind of a risky thing to fall into the hands of the living God.
Right. It is.
Baptism is like, you sure
Right.
you want this?
Right.
You think it's an insurance policy that you're going to go to heaven? Please don't make it that simplistic and childlike and
Right.
silly.
Right, right.
No. This is
Yeah.
you're committing to something
Well, and Paul,
here.
and Paul is also here, and especially in this passage, really hesitant about thinking that our intentions are going to get us very far. Paul is all about the divine rescue plan.
Yes.
Who will rescue me from this body of death?
Thanks
And
be to
again,
God.
don't hear it as just my physical, material body, but who will rescue me from death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. Jesus is the one who rescues us, and
Right.
Jesus doesn't just rescue us one day,
No.
at one moment, and then it kind of cleans, washes his hands and he's done. It's actually a lifetime of rescue,
Right.
and so Paul here is pretty clearly putting his finger on the scale that this is an external event from the intention of Paul or anyone else.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's great. You can't have that Saul to Paul conversion, right? I mean, and many of us do. I don't really have
Right.
that moment where I go, oh, I went this way, and now I'm with Jesus, I'm against. I really have not had that experience, but many people do, and it's valid.
Yes.
But that's just like the beginning.
Right.
You've not
Right.
just arrived.
Right.
You're being transformed. And that's the initial
Yeah.
shock wave or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the authenticity of that transformation is lived out ultimately then. How do we not just live with me and my relationship with Jesus, but how do I live with you?
Right. Right.
And how can I not be anything but kinder, gentler, all the fruits of the Spirit, right? Those are the marks of our sanctification.
Right.
And if we're not doing that, if we're not judging others by those standards, then it's an indication that we all have more room
Yeah.
for transformation.
Right.
Right?
Close the gap.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
It's great. Well, I think we've run out of time.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you for joining us. If you've lasted this long, it's great to have you. And we invite you to church on Sunday, this July 4th weekend. Join us online or in person, however you'd like to join us. It's always good to be together. And now we hope you feel a little more prepared to hear these words. We'll see you soon.
See ya.